Good afternoon and welcome. I apologize if I'm a little awkward because I can't see my screen right now, but I'm Joanna Behrens, the president of Sustainable Events Network, Florida and Caribbean, and we are delighted to have with us today presentation by Susan Flak, our board member, and Heather Armstrong, member of Sustainable Events Network, Florida and Caribbean. We're trying to run ahead and get started because we have such wonderful content. I'm going to apologize up front that after I introduce everybody, I'm going to back out and turn it over and I'll log back in. I did want to make some announcements and welcome everybody because today is America Recycles Day. And that is today, November 15th. That's why we're so delighted to be having this presentation about what is zero waste events. And I know you guys are going to love it. I attended this presentation of sorts at the Florida Festival and Events Association conference in August and was just blown away with the information. As Sustainable Events Network, Florida and Caribbean, we're committed to promoting sustainable practices within the meetings and events industry throughout Florida and the Caribbean. And we have some wonderful programs going. We invite you, if you are not already affiliated with the organization, to take a look at our website, senfc.org. We have a number of upcoming events. I'm going to highlight our next virtual networking, which takes place every month on the first Thursday of the month, 4 to 5 p.m. will take place on December 1st as we go over holiday libation ideas that are sustainable. We bring practices to the virtual networking as a way to get to know one another and share best practices. Soon after the new year, on January 5th, which is also a Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m., we will be having a trivia gathering of event food waste questions and answers in preparation for compilation for Food Waste Prevention Week's gamification, which will be taking place in April of 2023. And then on January 11th, stay tuned with more specifics, but we're going to have a presentation by our valued members, Sarah Gable and Suzanne Neve, of the Executive Director of Florida Festival and Events Association, on the creation and implementation of a sustainability plan at a conference, which was executed in August by Sarah Gable. And we look forward to downloading all of that information and hearing more about it. Last but not least, we invite you to consider making a donation to what is now our nonprofit status of SENFC. Giving Tuesday is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And we are asking everybody to consider, in lieu of gifts, maybe make a donation to your favorite charity and let it be SENFC. Without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Sue and Heather. Thank you so much for being with us.
Joanna, thank you for that amazing introduction and for sharing that today is America Recycles Day. Hopefully everyone did your part to help share the message and the word about the small things that you can do to make our environment a better place. And I'm Heather Armstrong, Executive Director of Recycle Florida Today. And Recycle Florida Today is Florida's state recycling organization comprised of the public, private, nonprofit, and institutional industries that focus on recycling and waste reduction. And here with me today, we have Sue Flak. Sue, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Flak. I'm the recycling coordinator for Indian River County. I sit on the wonderful board of Recycle Florida Today and also on the fabulous board of SENFC as their chief recycling enthusiast. So thank you for having us. We're going to share so much information that I'm afraid I'm going to miss some, but that's okay. We'll leave you with lots of takeaways, toolkit items, virtual toolkit items, that is, and lots of good stuff. So we're off and rolling.
All right. So, and just in case, if you have any questions, you can feel free to type those into the chat. Sue and I will try our best to answer those questions at the end. But before we begin, we do have a couple of learning objectives for you. Sue, would you like to review the learning objectives?
Sure. So we're going to learn the importance of communication and consistency, which is such an important word, which will lead to an effective zero waste event. And we're going to talk a lot about how education and communication work hand in hand, how important they are in the nature of circular products and also the production of the actual event. And we're going to leave you with lots and lots of strategies, I promise, and takeaways towards creating your own zero waste event. So I like to say, you know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So creating a zero waste event is going to take some time, and it may not happen the first time. It may happen the third time. It may not happen for a long time. It may be a small event. It may be a large event. It all will be looking different to each and every one of us. So any of the tools and opportunities that we give you to take away today, please make sure you tweak them and make them your own on however you need to do that. So from there, I would just say, like, so what is a zero waste event? For those of us that don't know, a zero waste event is an event with a 90% or greater diversion rate. Yikes. That's why you have to try time and time and to work out the kinks to get to that true zero waste diversion. It's a tough thing. So I'll leave it there, Heather, and let you continue.
Wonderful. So again, all of this information is being recorded. We're going to have all of the links and resources that we're going to share throughout this presentation and towards then. They're available on the recyclefloridatoday.org website, as well as you're going to have access to QR codes. So for today, again, feel free to just absorb as much as you can. This will be shared with you post-event. Sue's going to talk to us about the 5 R's.
Right. So, you know, it used to be in the olden days that we looked at the 3 R's, and that's what we kind of taught our students and our kids, you know, reduce, reuse, and recycle. And that's all great. And in our world today, we think recycling is so important, especially on a day like today, America Recycles Day. And it is an important thing, but we need to make a paradigm in the way we think about municipal solid waste and about recycling in general. And so I like to say that we should really have the big 5 instead of the big 3. So the first thing we need to do as event organizers, as just consumers, is to rethink about what we're using. Do I really need that plastic straw? Probably not. Do I really need to use that single-use plastic item? Probably not. And then the second R would be refuse. No, thank you. I don't need that item. So in refusing, you are automatically reducing the amount of those items that you're using. And of course, we reuse, especially in the event industry, all the time, whether it's recyclable silverware or plates or linens. And what comes last? Recycling. Recycling is not first. It should come last. So that's why it's really important that we make that paradigm shift away from thinking about recycling as coming first. We simply are producing way too much product to put recycling first. So when you're thinking about the 5 R's in planning your events, and we'll talk about some other things to precursor your events, it's important to think about these hurdles. These are some of the hurdles in recycling in general that we need to, when you're building your foundation of your event, it's so front loaded. You're going to be looking at some of these things and how they're going to affect you. Of course, the first thing when we think about is the economics or the cost of recycling, which is a huge, huge challenge. Matter of fact, Francis and Heather and I were just discussing that because if there's no end market for a material, then there's no way for cities, municipalities, government industries to collect the cost or recoup the cost of all that collection, transportation, and sorting of material. So you really need to think, is this something that's going to be cost effective to me and to my events? We've found now that facilities just can't afford to recycle, so they're cutting back on their programs and perhaps eliminating them altogether. Again, because we just have so much product out there. It's just not cost effective. Another big issue that we have, more challenges, is that the business of recycling is very, very complicated. So in the United States, we have no federal standard regulation for recycling. So every state recycles different, every county recycles different, every municipality recycles different, every town recycles different, every city recycles different. It's really confusing. So when you're thinking about your event and you want to really be committed to reducing the confusion, really make sure that you're familiar with what your community and what your area or where the event venue is, what they will recycle and what they won't. For example, do they collect glass? Will they take glass? It's wonderful if you collect all the glass, but if you don't have someone that will take the glass, it's really kind of useless. And of course, along with confusion causes contamination. And contamination is simply anything that goes into a recycle bin that doesn't belong there. A lot of times it's caused by wish cycling because we haven't had proper education. We put things in there that we want to recycle because it makes us feel good, but they don't really belong in there. And the other contamination comes from food. Now, I will say you're going to have contamination at an event. The goal is to make it as least as possible. And then the other thing I wanted to touch base on, and it is a big hurdle, especially when you're educating the attendees and also your employees, both front of the house and back of the house, that there are some misnomers that we need to know about. The first is the dreaded chasing arrow, which was originated as a wonderful thing, as a sign of that this item is recyclable. But really, we have very little legislation right now on the chasing arrow. So I could literally put a chasing arrow on this granola bar and say that it's recyclable. And I would probably buy it because it would make me feel better. The other misnomer we have are the numbers 1 through 7. Those numbers are put there not to tell us if an item is truly recyclable, but it's to tell us what the product is actually made out of. So for example, number 3 is PVC piping. Well, you can't recycle that. Number 6 is polystyrene or styrofoam. You can't really recycle that, or at least not in the recycle bin. So I like to tell people, don't be a numbers person, don't play the numbers game. So these are some of the hurdles that you might want to think about when you're front loading an event, whether it be big or small, things that that you need to look at. And I can't stress enough, getting to know your area. What does your specific area require as far as the world of recycling? Okay, Heather. So what are some best practices that we're going to leave with you today? And we're going to talk a lot about them. Whoops. But some of the best practices are, again, building those relationships and building the relationships before the actual event or venue, making sure you build them within your community. If you are going to compost, reach out to the local composter, make sure that you have all your dots, the I's dotted and your T's crossed, make sure you've got those relationships in place. And having a strong green team is really important for both front of the house and back of the house, because you are going to have some sort of turnover, whether it's volunteer and or employee. And if your green team is aware of all of the things that they need to know, they can better train the new employees as well as the existing ones. And again, there's that C word, consistency. Heather and I are going to talk about it a lot today. Some of the other things is signage. We're going to talk a lot about consistency in signage and the importance of good signage. And then, of course, food recovery. As we all know, 50% of our landfills are food waste. So we need to find better ways for food recovery. And again, that goes back to building those community relationships. Where in your community can you bring your recovered food to? Do you have a means of transportation, maybe means database or wherever it is that will help you get that food recovered to the specific spot it's going? And then just in general, making those good choices, which we'll talk a bit about as well. Heather?
So with that, Sue has shared a lot about how you set the stage for a successful event. Well, we've connected with a lot of our partners at Recycle for Today, and they're going to help us tell this story to you and also give you some resources for how you can work towards zero waste events. The first share is from Joe England at the City of Orlando. And we're going to help share this presentation on behalf of Joe. And this is the Guide to Green Works for Events. And there is a wealth of information in this. In fact, Sue and I took some time to really narrow this down for today's talk. But once you take time to really dig deep into this yourself, you're going to see all of the resources that we're going to talk about today and more. So we're going to break this up into 3 sections: before the event, during the event, and after the event. Anytime you're working towards a zero waste, you really need to kind of dissect your event and put it into parts, because there are going to be different focal points that you're going to want to do to help yourself be successful.
So I will say that, again, to reiterate what Heather said, you know, take these checklists and these tools and change them and make them work for you. This is just almost like us being a waiter, and we're just giving you a choice of the food. You make the choice, right? You use it as you can. But again, when you're looking at some of these event organizing checklists, we want to talk a little bit about communication and marketing, because communication is so important, whether it's with your attendees, for your volunteers, with your volunteers. Everybody works together. And some of those are listed here. Of course, we all know trying to buy reusable materials, but ahead of time, looking at your vendors, having your vendor lists all in place, and looking at your costs. How much is that going to cost? Is it more economical for me to use reusable plates? Is it not? All of that good stuff. You want to make sure that all of your checklists are in place well before the event, and that they are supplied to everybody that's involved, and to be supplied even as far as to the people that have registered already for your event. So one of the things, for example, is if you're going to be communicating that this is a zero waste event, we want you to participate in this event by bringing your own reusable cup and using our water stations. Give them some kind of incentive to want to do that. Maybe it's an extra free meal ticket, or maybe it's a online free giveaway. Whatever that is, use those incentives accordingly. So I'm not going to read everything on this, but you can definitely look at it on your own. So this is really kind of important too. If you are going to participate in zero food waste along with your recycling, who's going to help you with that? How are you going to train your volunteers or your employees on the proper ways to reduce food? You're going to have to use really good signage, really good advertising and marketing before the event and during the event. So you can take a look at these pictures and they really speak for themselves. This is an example of a food waste station. So, you know, if the signage is there, the volunteer is there to help guide the people through it. The cans are properly labeled consistently. They're easy to read. You know exactly where your food waste is supposed to go. And then there's always that strategic placement. Don't give anyone a no choice. Always give them a choice. In other words, always have your recycling container next to your garbage can. And that way they'll have a better idea of where it goes. Again, we talked about water refill stations, how important those are, and signage. Keep it simple, and Heather's going to talk a lot more about signage. One of the other cool things is eliminating those grab bags or making them virtual grab bags, so we have less waste with that. How many times have we thrown one of those away, or tons of flyers in there, paper waste that we don't need? Even so much as going as far as having reusable table tents on the tables that kind of remind people what should go and what can go into recycling or composting, all of those kind of things. Heather, do you want to add anything to that? Because go ahead if I forgot something, because I know we had so much.
No, I think you take care of everything. So those were great points to make.
Okay, and again, this goes back to engaging your stakeholders. So before your event, have all of your stakeholders lined up, have all of your vendors and your contractors and everything lined up, make sure they are all on the same page and working together, and so that there is no misconception. And we're going to talk about some takeaways from that actual Tortuga event, in which this was so vital and key. And then once you have your checklists and your signage and your maps, whether they're virtual maps or regular maps, have them posted so that everybody can see them, everybody's aware of what's going on, they can use them, and your volunteers can retrain new people as they come in accordingly. So engaging your stakeholders is important. Heather, jump in if I forget anything.
So you talked a lot about engaging the stakeholders, and communication is key, really making sure that they are well informed of your expectation, and don't just expect to share it once or in one format. If you're going to give it to them written, make sure that you send them early reminders and frequent reminders. Also put things out as they are going through the event at a place where they can universally see it. Individuals who are really helping you to perform the event, or volunteering their time, or if they're paid staff, having those constant reminders really help them to do their job successfully. And it will also help your event really move forward with success. We'll talk a lot, again, as Sue said, about the signage as we move forward, and the consistency of signage and the variation in signage.
So wow, what a big, I'm so glad you gave me this slide, Heather. Thank you. Some of this stuff that we've already talked about, but again, tweaking it to your own needs. So for example, is your event going to be a vegan event? Will it be a partial vegan event? Do you want it no vegan event? Maybe reaching out to those that have obviously, registered for the event. What was their expectation? What do they need? What are their requirements? And again, using those incentives for both your volunteers and the attendees is so important, keeping them engaged. And then, of course, please trying to not only recycle, but look at your food waste recovery. Where is that system going to be put into place? How is it going to work? All of these are really important things. And then also looking at the venue location, maybe they have certain, not qualifications, but expectations as well. So they may have specific qualifications for something, as you might not think about it, as cooking oil contamination and collection. So making sure that you're really communicating with that vendor location and what they're using and what they're not. And then some of these other ones we know about too, non-dairy alternatives, trying to buy locally. Is that going to be really the best way to do it? Cost effective wise, all of that should be in place before the event takes place. Heather, chime in if you need to.
Now, Sue, I think connecting with the vendors beforehand is going to be critical, because the last thing you want to do is plan for something that you think is going to happen and you don't have a vendor that is able to produce that on their end. So having those discussions and clear communication beforehand is really critical to making sure that all of your needs are met elsewhere in your planning process. So as Sue was saying, on the marketing and communication side, we're going to talk about promotion and marketing. So event signage really aligns with consistency. So when you are promoting and marketing your event, there are a variation of ways that you're going to want to do this. And again, Sue talked about tweaking. It's dependent on your event. Your event may be fully virtual, so of course you're going to go towards a virtual means, but you also want to think about your audience. If your audience is one that is a more seasoned or aged audience, you want to make sure that you're going to meet those communication and marketing needs that are going to actually attract and get to that audience. If you're working with a younger crowd, then of course you're going to want to look at the virtual means and other types of social media. That also includes your staff and volunteers. Again, visuals are critical. It's easy to see, it communicates the message clearly, and it doesn't take a long time to read what it is that you're trying to communicate. As we move to communication and marketing later on, we're going to give some examples of how you can clearly communicate through marketing, signage, and other types of promotion with quick and easy resources. So I'm not going to take time to read all this because you will have an opportunity to peruse it at your leisure post-event. But promotion and marketing is not a one-stop shop. It isn't where you're going to put out a flyer and expect that people are going to read it. In fact, most people are not going to read your flyer. They might look at the picture and see where they're supposed to be going, but they're not going to read much more than a couple of words. So what I would advise for you to do is to make sure that your messaging is consistent, that it's visual for wherever those individuals are going to be. So for example, if this is a race, you might want to make sure you have it at the water refill stations, or it's something that they can grab and go, something that they're going to see in a quick instant, something that they can maybe see on their smartwatch as they're running and checking how much longer they need to run before they cross the finish line. If you're looking at children, something that is low to the ground that they can actually see and help you to get your messaging across. When you are promoting and marketing, it is very important that you also look at reducing your waste by going electronic. Yes, we do like to have paper receipts, but it's just as easy to see it on your phone and forward it to wherever you need to for your accounting or so forth and so on. It's going to be okay. And those that really want to print it, they can print it when they get home.
I think another thing too there, Heather, is really walking the walk and talking the talk. So if you want a true ultimate green event or zero waste event, things like alternate bus schedules or carpooling or places where people can ride their bikes and park, that's encouraged and promoted. And I think that's really important too.
Mm-hmm. Education. It's really about educating folks that it's possible. And sometimes they're just not aware until they actually try it. And your event might be the first for them to do it, but it's a learned skill. And now they can apply that skill as they move forward in other areas of their life.
Correct. Absolutely. Signage. We can't say enough about signage. And Heather's going to really dig a little bit deeper into it, but easy to read, universal, consistent in both the front of the house, the back of the house, wherever your signage needs to be, that it will educate the attendees, but it'll also remind your volunteers and or employees. Very important. Needs to be more picture oriented than word oriented. I think of it as the stop sign analogy. You could go anywhere in the world and see a stop sign and know exactly what that means. And that's as important it is for you to have that signage that same way, so that people do not have that doubt. We always say when in doubt, throw it out. But if we could alleviate that altogether because our signage was sustainable, that would be awesome. So big stress there. And I think we're going to look at some examples, right, Heather, of signage? Yes.
We are, Sue.
So again, like Heather said, education, educating your staff and your volunteers, having that training, having your virtual mapping so they know where each station is, that they're encouraged to help the attendees. If they have a question, they'll know the answer. Thanking the attendees for helping to participate in a zero waste event, but also having you make sure you thank your employees and your volunteers for being so dedicated to a zero waste event. And then thinking about other ways to encourage, again, your volunteers and the attendees before the event to either carpool or to bring their own reusable water bottles or whatever your incentives are. That's really, really important. And I won't read through all these, but Heather, if I forget something, just chime in. And I think too, this is a great example of a map that Heather and I are going to tag team on, but providing those to the people who are attending the event is just as important as having them for your volunteers. If you have someone who's just on cleaning of the zero waste stations, they need to know where they are in order to clear them. And if somebody wants to participate in using one, they need to know where they are if they want to use it correctly. So this is a great little map layout of an outdoor event, but what we loved about it is you could certainly make this into an indoor event map as well. So your food trucks would just become your food stations. Your dining area might be the same, your zero waste stations, your water refill stations. And then here it talks a little bit more about your parking and your valet. So this is a great little tool. Heather, do you want to add on that?
You know, and when you're using a map, which is a great visual tool, something that you can add as an added level of when you need to update, because things do change with events, as we all know, is to make it virtual. If you are going to have a printed map, then include a QR code that can be linked to your website. So if you do need to move a water station or a table or your recycling receptacles or really anything, you can refresh that map so that individuals know in real time where to go to get things, and just have a QR code. And if it is updated, at least your back at the house has an idea of where those things have gone, and they can help to direct those that are participating in your event in real time. So now, I know, during it, we're here.
Oh my goodness, yeah, so the event's going and you're gonna roll with it and it's gonna go great. You probably will have some hiccups, but you'll be able to make your way through. We're gonna take a look now at some zero waste stations and how important those are. And just that can, of course, will decrease the contamination, which I think is so important. And as does the clear signage and wayfinding. So let's take a look. Here's a great example. This one was a zero waste station at an event in Orlando. You can see how important the pictures are. You have a volunteer there that is working that area, so that in case there were questions, the bins are clearly marked. Look at the signage. It's right there. Recycle here. Woohoo! Beauty to my eyes, I can say right there. Using bright colors, making it simple, and then having volunteers there to educate the visitors and or any of the attendees so that you reduce the contamination. And signage, signage, signage. Again, you absolutely can look at these three signs and know exactly what goes where. No question about it. Here's another great example of some signage. You can see some examples of the plastic-free water stations, which are really, really cool. Sometimes it's easy enough just to put containers or what have you, receptacles next to the actual water stations. You can see the bike valet down below, encouraging people to ride their bikes as an alternative. And even something as simple as making sure people know where they can park their electric vehicles in, which is important.
So now that we've had before the event and during the event, we're going to wrap it up with after the event. And this is where a lot of your work is, because you want to know how successful your event was. And again, zero waste doesn't mean having zero waste. It means achieving 90% of your waste being reduced. And so Sue and I are going to tag team on this. There are several models that you can use to help you with your post-event measurement and reporting. So do you want to kick us off, and I'll circle, I'll give some updates on the WARM model.
So yeah, we all know it's data, data, data. Everything is data driven and metrics driven. And in order to make sure we get the proper data, we have to make sure that we have proper scales for weighing volume. We have people that are going to sort through to look for contamination and do that contamination audit or that waste audit. And even things as far as at those water stations, you know, they'll give you that information on how much water you've saved by using your renewable or your reusable container. And a lot of times there's certain venue locations that are also going to be collecting some of that data or metrics already in place for you. That's something that they already do, like how many gallons of fuel you used or how many kilowatts of electricity you use. So they may be able to assist you in collecting all of that data, because in the end, that's what you want to look at to see how successful your event was and see what needs to be improved for your next event, because you're definitely going to have some hiccups. And Heather, I'm going to let you touch on the EPA WARM model.
Right. So the EPA has created the WARM model, which is the waste reduction model. And you can find this on their website. You can just search EPA WARM model and it will pull it up for you. And it's a wealth of information. And in essence, it's going to help provide some information on the estimated potential greenhouse gas emissions and reduction in energy savings and other economic variables from waste management practices. And I think it includes maybe 60 or so different materials, and it does really outline and give you some really good information on the EPA website. And at the end of our talk, when we're going through Q&A, I will post that link for anyone who's interested in getting more information on the EPA WARM model. So, Sue, that was a lot of information to share. And I think we really need to thank Joe again for sharing this. But more importantly, if you'd like to reach out to Joe, his information and email address is below. And we'd also like to, on his behalf, invite you to sign up for their newsletters and their email lists via this link that is included in this presentation. And again, as a reminder, you will receive this presentation post-event for your continued enjoyment. So, Sue, we've talked about the 5 R's before, during, and after the event. Now we're going to get to how do we let folks know about it and about all that we want to do or all that you want to do to help yourself be successful towards hosting a zero waste event. Well, we've talked about this the entire time. Communication is key. So it's time to embrace the zero waste revolution, or at least try to help your attendees and folks get there. Sue really talked about it. I mean, she set the stage. Images matter, the signage, the consistency, and just relaying your message. Why are images so important? Well, research shows that about 65% of individuals are visual learners, meaning that they will see a message before they read a message and before they hear a message. Think about your kids or the young people that you see. Half the time they're in their phone looking at things. TikTok, Instagram, everything has become quick and instant. They're viewing, they're not listening, and they definitely most likely are not reading. But if you can take your messages and visualize them, you're more apt to reach them. And really anyone. 90% of information is transmitted to the brain, that is transmitted to the brain is visual. We will process that faster. So when you are sharing information on your events about where to go and what to do it in a visual format. It's also going to help anyone who has a language barrier, which is a wonderful thing to do. So we can transcend languages, we can transcend ages, and it really helps to tighten who you're going to reach, or broaden who you're going to reach with utilizing visual images. So once you've got your messaging consistent and you've added visuals, consistency in sharing, and you want to make sure that you're going to share it in a variation of ways, because Sue might see it on a recycling container, but I might see it via a QR code, and someone else might see it on their phone, and someone else might read it in the paper. So diversifying the way that you're sharing your messaging is important. You're going to want to think of your audience and maintain consistent and focused messaging across a multitude of platforms. Sue, anything you want to add?
No, I just think really just to reiterate too, the messages are for those that are coming to the event, that are going to attend the event, right? But they're also for those that will never see the front of the house, that are just in the back of the house the whole time. Maybe they're just washing dishes, but they need to have that message shared as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we talk about information, we want individuals to be able to read it. Short bursts of information. Studies show that the average attention span is about 8 seconds. And Sue and I, we were practicing, and we were saying most people probably don't remember what we talked about 2 slides ago because we're doing other things. We're multitasking. We have just become busy people, which is which is really great, but we also need to think about the audience of whom we're trying to serve. So short bursts of information will help you to get your message across and actually help your participants to retain the messaging that you are trying to give to them. As an example, Recycle Florida Today is sharing the benefits of recycling that we produced. It's an infographic that we produced in collaboration with EPA or support of EPA. And each of these short bursts of information you should be able to read in 8 seconds or less. The 10 common recyclable items, one word: cardboard, paper, food boxes. It's almost like you can sing it, and the shorter the information, the easier it is to remember. So we've shared about communication, marketing, working with your vendors, the front of the house, the back of the house, the participants. Now we're going to give you some resources. So the first resource we have is being shared with permission from Kessler Consulting Inc. And thank you to Kessler. This is the Best Management Practices Guide. And it's a guide to help anyone who's working towards zero waste or waste reduction or recycling best management practices. It is available on our website at Recycle Florida Today, or you can take a picture and the QR code is below and it will take you directly to the website. Anything you'd like to add here, Sue?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, and in the essence of time, I'll be quiet.
Okay. Okay. Would you like to review the guide to Greenworks for events?
Yes, I just can't even tout this enough. It is phenomenal, guys. Really get on there. I mean, the city of Orlando does amazing things to become green. Look at their lofty goals for 2050. I mean, it's just an amazing thing, and all the things they do and all of the information in here is fantastic.
And the last resource that we'd like to share is from Hillsborough County, and thank you to Hillsborough County as well for sharing. They give a really quick one-pager on guidance on special events recycling, and as Sue was talking about the 5 R's, they are sharing. Think of the 5 W's: the who, what, when, where, and why. And it's a really good read for quick bursts of information for anyone who's wanting to just get some quick information on how to work towards zero waste events. And that is also available on our website and via the QR code. So now you've been given some information and some resources. And before we close for today, we're going to share some visuals. We talked about visuals, so we're going to give you some videos through 3 case studies of events. And again, zero waste doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect. In fact, don't go into your event thinking that it's going to be perfect. Go into your event thinking about how you're going to improve. And Sue's going to talk about Tortuga.
Yes, this is an amazing event, and I think Xavier, a good friend of mine, is on this Zoom today. If you are Xavier, thank you. But I had the opportunity to speak with him about this huge event. This event last year had more than 100,000 attendees, which is a big event. But Xavier, who has a composting company called Renewable, really worked hand in hand with Anastasia, the founder of Lean Orb, in making sure that all of their vendors were using a compostable product. As a matter of fact, they had to sign a venue agreement saying that they were going to be using, all the venues would be using Lean Orb's product for the event versus bringing something else in. This was an event that they composted on site for the very first time last year. I'm sharing this with you because Xavier gave me some really great takeaways, things that they're going to improve next year. And his information is down below if you wanted to reach out to him, it's right there. But you can see the amount of food waste that they've diverted through this event and of the overall tonnage of waste that was diverted from this event. Some of the things that I thought was really cool, just by doing what they did, they were able to keep the contamination rate from anywhere from about 10 to 15%. Xavier shared that they had over 250 waste compost stations located throughout the front of the house and the back of the house of this event. And each caterer was given a 55-gallon drum in the back of the house during the event. He said it was a 24/7 hour event, 24/7 event, and golf carts were running all day. some of the things that they had a little bit of hiccup with, you can see in the compost bin there. Again, they're all right together, so people have that choice. But those bags, he said that they used were also compostable, and when they got wet, they started to break down a little. So that was a difficulty. He said, make sure that you plan for rain. If you're having an outdoor venue event, make sure you plan for a rain event, because that really, really does happen. And remember that this commitment is very labor intensive. It's not just going to happen on its own. There's a lot of, again, preparation involved before the event and even during the event. He said that one of the things, and let's roll the video real quick first, because you'll see the screens. So this is just a bit, you can see how huge this is. But he said one of the things that they want to work on better next year is educating the attendees. They had a lot of incentives there, like education booths for how to compost and things like that, but more messaging on the screens that would tell people, hey, you know, we've got compost stations, or just in better ways to educate them. And he also talked about making sure you have accountability for your venue. So just that they signed a contract saying they're going to use the compost material doesn't mean they're not going to try and sneak their own in or just decide to use their own. So that was something that I thought was a really good takeaway too. So obviously they had hiccups. I mean, it's a large event, but they walked away learning, you know, a lot of improvements that they'll even make again more next year.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's so, I think it's just great to show this, because with Florida having so many beaches and just, you know, this type of special event and what can be done when you put your mind to it. So to me, this is a great example. Well, next we're going to have a share, and we're actually going to have two shares from the Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County, and they're going to show us some special events and how they help others to move towards zero waste. Now, this is a great place to start. So I think this video illustrates several things about how education to your staff is important, as well as how, even with the best of education, you're going to have hiccups. And Sue's going to point out the hiccup here and just talk to us about it.
Yeah, so this is obviously a cardboard collection receptacle. It's a roll-off dumpster for cardboard, but you can see that it's not all cardboard. Somebody was misinformed in putting a plastic bag. It looks like there's cardboard in the plastic bag, but we all know plastic bags are not recyclable, especially in a cardboard container. So, you know, the takeaway there is go back and find out who put that in there and not reprimand them, but re-educate them that it just doesn't belong in there.
Mm-hmm. In every event, you're going to have things that you're going to have to re-educate on. Every year there's something new, and every year your event is going to change a little bit. So re-education is a constant. It is something that you're going to need to do each and every time, and you will learn and grow from it.
The Solid Waste Authority is looking to establish a solid event recycling program. And the Boca Bowl was our first chance to test our pilot project to see how successful it could be.
This is one of the larger events in Palm Beach County, and we felt as if it would be a marquee event.
We plan on doing event recycling by placing containers in areas that we feel that people will recycle. One of the goals is always having a recycle bin next to a trash can. Our staff at Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County, we went and we cleaned and got our containers stickered and got them all ready to bring them down here. And we placed the 25, the smaller containers, outside underneath the tents where the party areas are.
We learned a lot at the Boca Bowl and a lot of things we're going to take into the next steps so the Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County can be a leader in the state in event recycling.
You know what's exciting to me about that video is, first, it really kind of relays all the things that we've shared so far, Sue, but at the end, Willie, and again, thank thank you to the Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County. But Willie, at the very end, he talks about we learned a lot. And after every event, you're going to learn a lot. And those takeaways you can take with you forward as you go towards your next event.
Absolutely. So just a quick recap. We talked about before your event, when you're planning and front loading your event, making sure you remember the big five, those 5 R's in conjunction with the 5 W's when you're doing your planning, and the importance of partnership within your community, with your vendors, with everybody, and how communication goes key with that. And then your placement of containers, how important that is. You saw that in the videos. Staff and volunteer training, and then your messaging and signage. So those are some of the things that we hope that we gave you some takeaways on in our event, in our presentation today.
And before we begin to close, we'd like to send us again a special thank you to the City of Orlando and Joe England for the presentation for before, during, and after special event recycling, as well as a special thank you to our contributing members for contributing resources and videos to this presentation: Hillsborough County, Kessler Consulting, Inc., and the Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County. And again, I'm Heather Armstrong, Executive Director of Recycle Florida Today, and
I'm Sue Flak, Recycling Coordinator for Indian River County.
And we appreciate and thank you for joining us today.
And don't go away. Thank you so much. And I want to just applaud you guys for a wonderful reboot of the terrific presentation that some of us enjoyed in August. Again, and invite questions, which we've had in the chat. Sue and Heather, I owe you both an apology because I had so many tech issues at the front end. I did not do the proper introductions. And we do appreciate that Heather is Executive Director of Recycle Florida Today and has been such a great resource to us. I've known Heather for several years already, and we're delighted to have your partnership with us at SENFC. And Sue is a valued member of our board as well, and with Indian River County overseeing recycling. And she's taught me inordinate amount, all of us, and I have to hear it over and over again, but eventually it will stick. So I wanted to highlight some of the questions that came through the chat. Real quick, I'm going to throw several at you. Do you have a list of businesses that provide water stations in Southeast Florida? I'd love to get rid of single-use water bottles for our volunteers and vendors. This is from Nancy at Martin Arts. Francis Purvey suggested you look at aqueduct.eco. Chad Midnight is a member of our organization, and also put Sue's contact information in the chat. Would Heather and or Sue like to add to that information?
I don't have anything to add, but I always suggest that you work with local vendors or look to your local county or municipality or someone within your city. They're going to be a wealth of information for finding vendors locally. So I always suggest to start there. And if you would like to forward an email, I can help maybe connect you with some individuals locally to expand your network.
One of my biggest issues with the first film was this finale that took place that looked very much like a fight from Spider-Man 3, and the VFX looked unfinished. The VFX this time.
That was weird. Hello. All right. We'll continue. Thank you. Let's see what else we've got coming in here. Presentation being recorded. Oh, question from Stephen Pollock. What organization set 90% as the criterion for being deemed zero waste?
That you can reach out to Suzanne Neve, because that's where I got that statistic from, and she's a wealth of information when it comes to that.
Okay, wonderful. So Suzanne Neve at FFEA. Jill Brown, thank you for putting into the chat the food safe stainless steel storage aqueduct water system. For those of you who haven't looked at the chat, the aqueduct system that Indian River County is similar to this. And then Julie Jacob, I have an event in Orlando that I'm attempting waste reduction measures for the first time. This was so helpful. Thank you. Vicki Corder, I had missed just sharing that from a standpoint of menu planning, consider starting with great options for vegans and then build on that for vegetarians and meat eaters. Nancy was also asking if it's possible to get a presentation, which it will be. We put all of our webinars, which are recorded, on the senfc.org website. And I believe Francis said by Friday of this week, you'll be able to review that recording.
Joanna,
Suzanne,
I
yes.
just wanted to add one thing. In looking at the impressive chat here, I am amazed. There's a wealth of knowledge right here in the chat. Everyone working together, all of us on this Zoom sharing information. So reach out to your colleagues too and those around you, because it's awesome. It's awesome. Thank you everybody for sharing this great stuff.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. And Suzanne Morel has shared the epa.gov /warm website, which had come up in the conversation. Again, let me just see, there was something else. Sharing a sustainable events consultant, Julia Spangler, whom she had heard. I think many of us have heard Julia. She's very good. juliaspangler.com. And Suzanne just had a zero waste event. First step was to not create waste in the first place. Simple start was to ask linen provider to not put linens in plastic bags, use toters or cloth garment bags. And from Julie Jacob, another website, ecosystemevents.com. And then Heather has Transforming Waste, EPA Transforming Waste Tool. Just a quick takeaway that I wrote down, again, as an event planner, I think something that really resonated with me in both presentations: signage, messaging, consistency, brevity. Cannot emphasize enough, because when we're at these events, we're multitasking and so distracted. So the points that you ladies made about the signage, the messaging, the consistency, and the brevity are much appreciated. And that really resonated with me. And I wanted to also emphasize what we preach with SENFC. It can be overwhelming to start initiating sustainable practices into events. It is a process. Get started. Take that first step. And as the gentleman from, I think, Palm Beach County said, we learned a lot in the process. So you do a few things, you take stock, you come back, you start over, and you see what you can do again. Otherwise, if we don't get started, we're not going to get anywhere, right, ladies? And then we have great resources like you all. So any other questions or things coming in the chat? We try to be cognizant and respectful of everyone's time. How am I doing? Are we at 5 o'clock? It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
That's right.
Well,
I put the link to the resources that Sue and I talked about, a link to our RFT website, and anyone who's interested in those 3 resources can go to the website and download them right now.
terrific. Thank you. And we've had record-breaking attendance at this particular education event. And we thank you for your time and effort and all of your knowledge and wisdom that you're sharing with us. Clearly, there's an audience for it. Those of you who are not members of SENFC, again, consider joining. $22 a year. We don't want the cost to be a barrier to membership. We want you to be able to get involved with all of our initiatives, including our own zero food waste initiatives and the various other committees that we have in communications and education, et cetera. The website will tell you everything. So Sue and Heather, thank you again. And we bid everybody adieu. Bye-bye. Thank you.